Imagine the smell of a decaying city, the smell of bodies not buried quickly enough, the smell of fear, sweat, and death. Now imagine you are locked inside your own house, not by choice, because the neighbors nailed the door shut, because someone in your family coughed up blood, because a red cross appeared on your door with the words, "May God have mercy on us." Welcome to London, 1665, the summer that smelled of death. 100,000 people died. The king fled, the doctors too. The rich escaped to the countryside. The poor were locked in their homes with the sick. The city that had survived everything was being devoured from within. And the worst part? Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew how to stop it. It was the summer when death walked the streets, and this is the account of those who remained. The year was 1665. England was at war with Holland. The economy was in shambles. King Charles II was too busy with his court to worry about the poor of London. And then, in April, the first cases began to appear in the St. Giles neighborhood on the outskirts of London, a poor, overcrowded area where people lived crammed into wooden houses. The streets were narrow, dark, full of garbage and sewage, the perfect place for a plague to spread. No one knew what caused the disease. The idea that the plague was transmitted by rat fleas did not yet exist. People believed that the disease was caused by miasmas, evil vapors that came from the soil, from garbage, from decomposing bodies. Some believed it was a punishment from God. They looked for culprits. They pointed fingers at the poor, at foreigners, at Jews, at anyone who was not like them. What they did know, however, was how the disease manifested itself. The symptoms began with fever, chills, headaches, and vomiting. Then came the buboes, painful swellings in the neck, armpits, and groin. These swellings could grow to the size of an egg. The surrounding skin turned black, hence the name Black Death. The sick began to cough up blood. Their bodies became covered in dark spots. Many died within a few days, sometimes in just a few hours. By May, the plague had already spread to the city, the commercial center of London. By June, it was impossible to ignore. The number of weekly deaths went from 100 to 1,000 to 5,000. The churches, which still rang their bells to announce the deaths, could no longer keep up. The sound of the bells was constant, a soundtrack of mourning that never stopped. A witness from the time wrote, "The ringing of the bells is almost continuous." The doctors, with their bird-beak masks filled with herbs to purify the air, did what they could. But they knew that their treatments, bloodletting, purgatives, application of leeches, were useless.
They prescribed odor potions, amulets filled with aromatic flowers that people carried around their necks to ward off evil vapors. None of this worked. The disease continued to spread. The rich of London did what anyone would do. They fled. King Charles II went to Oxford with his entire court. The judges, the doctors, the rich merchants all left for the countryside, for their summer homes, for anywhere but London. The houses of the rich were closed. The ships on the Thames sailed without passengers. The city that had been the center of the commercial world turned into a desert. But the poor could not flee. Where would they go? The countryside did not want them. Neighboring cities closed their doors to Londoners. The government issued a decree. No one could leave London without a health certificate, a document signed by a doctor attesting that the person was not ill. But the doctors had also fled. As a result, only the rich, who could bribe a doctor, managed to escape. The poor were locked in the city, left to die. The diarist Samuel Pepys, who witnessed the epidemic, wrote, "I walked to the tower. God, how empty and melancholy the streets are. So many poor people sick, covered in sores. So many sad stories heard as one passes, of someone who has died, of another who is ill. There are no boats on the river, and the grass grows neglected at Whitehall Palace.
Whitehall Palace, the principal residence of the kings of England, was deserted. The king had gone away. The court had gone away. The gardens, once tended by gardeners, were covered in weeds. The city was silent, a silence that was more terrifying than the screams. The government created a desperate measure. Families who had a case of plague were to be locked in their homes. Not just the sick person, the whole family, everyone who lived in the same house. The doors were nailed shut from the outside. Guards were posted to watch, to prevent anyone from escaping. On the outside of the door, a red cross was painted, and the words, "May God have mercy on us." This was a warning to others, a warning to stay away. But it was also a death sentence for those inside. Imagine, you are locked in your house with your family. One of your children is sick. He coughs up blood. He has a fever. He is dying. You can't call a doctor. You can't go out to buy medicine. You can't ask for help. You are trapped with death. And while your child dies, you know that others are about to get sick too. Because the plague doesn't care if you are rich or poor. She does not respect closed doors. She does not hear prayers. Samuel Pepys described the first time he saw one of these crosses. "I saw 2 or 3 houses marked with a red cross, and the words, 'May God have mercy on us,' on the doors."
It was sad, for they were the first I had seen. The locked-in families were fed by guards who left food at the door, but the food often did not arrive. The guards, afraid of becoming contaminated, abandoned their posts. Families died of hunger before the plague. Death was the only liberation. When the plague reached its peak in September 1665, more than 7,000 people were dying per week. Gravediggers could not bury the bodies quickly enough. Cemeteries were full. Churches could no longer hold funerals. So the authorities opened mass graves, huge holes where bodies were thrown one on top of the other. No coffin, no religious service, no tears, just bodies. Daniel Defoe, who wrote his Journal of the Plague Year decades later, described the scenes. The dead were carried in carts, as if they were sacks of grain, and dumped into the ditches. The image is grotesque. Dead people, piled one on top of the other, covered in lime to disguise the smell. The gravediggers, when they could find someone to do the job, wore cloth masks soaked in vinegar, believing that the smell would protect them. The Reverend John Allen, who remained in London, wrote in his diary, "The disease is now very close to me. It is where my neighbors are on both sides, under the same roof. But I have nowhere to retreat, neither in the city nor in the country. I have nowhere to go, neither in heaven nor on earth. Only God." Amid this horror, some saw the plague as divine punishment. The Reverend believed that sincere repentance was the best antidote. People flagellated themselves, fasted, prayed. But God remained silent. The deaths continued. Commerce stopped, markets closed, shops were sealed. Taverns where people used to gather were empty. The economy collapsed. Sailors, without ships to work, became unemployed and also fell into misery. Many of them, hungry and sick, wandered the empty streets. The city, once vibrant and full of life, became an open-air cemetery. Daniel Defoe described, "The appearance of London was strangely altered. The whole mass of buildings, the city, although the center or within the walls, was not yet contaminated. But the streets were deserted, the shops closed. The silence was absolute." Thieves also took advantage of the chaos. The abandoned houses of the dead were looted. The houses where everyone had died were invaded. Greed was as powerful as fear. Defoe wrote, "I do not deny that many robberies and wicked acts were committed in that terrible time. Greed was so powerful over some that they exposed themselves to any risk to steal and plunder. But the thieves were also at risk. Entering a house where the plague had passed meant contracting the disease. Many died with the loot in their hands. The plague was democratic. It did not choose sinners or saints."
In the autumn of 1665, temperatures began to drop, and with the cold, the fleas began to die. The plague slowly began to recede. Weekly deaths, which in September exceeded 7,000, fell to 1,000, then to hundreds, then to dozens. Winter brought relief. King Charles II returned to London in February 1666. Trade resumed. Shops reopened. The church bells, which had rung so much for so many dead, now rang in gratitude. The city was relieved, but the scar remained. 100,000 people had died, a fifth of London's population. Entire families disappeared. The mass graves were covered with earth and forgotten. The city took a deep breath and prepared for the next disaster, because a year later, in 1666, the Great Fire of London would destroy much of the city. But that's another story. What remains of the plague of 1665 is a reminder of how death makes us all equal. Back then, there was no cure. There was no explanation. Only the despair of people locked in their homes, Red Cross on the door, waiting for the end. What they felt, what they saw, the smell they breathed, that cannot be forgotten. London survived. The city rebuilt itself, but it was never the same. Because the summer that smelled of death left a mark that not even fire could erase. And even today, walking through the streets of London, you can feel, if you pay attention, an echo of that summer. The echo of a city that was once a cemetery.
The echo of 100,000 voices that could not scream.